All right, I'm going to blame the cold, the frigid, freezing cold that we were recording in back in Lecce for leaving out some really important, cool things that we saw in that city. We need to talk about those now. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way.
If you're new here, I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin.
Although it's been cold here in Assisi, it hasn't been Lecce cold. And one of the things that I realized was that we never talked about the fact that Lecce is actually a walled city, and all of the walls are intact, and except for one gate, there's still 3 that remain.
Part of that is that this is also a walled city, so that certainly reminded us. And when you go to a new city, you certainly reflect on what you compare between the two cities.
There's even a self-guided tour of the walls of Lecce. So on the walls themselves are details, so you can follow along and learn some history along the way. You also want to be very sure that you are constantly looking up when you're around all of the exquisite architecture, because there is so much history up on the eaves of all of the buildings, and you really want to make sure that you see some of that.
And we talked about this a little bit in the last episode. The stone in Lecce is very soft and changes over time very quickly.
The soft limestone in Lecce is actually called Lecce stone.
So one of the big things we forgot to talk about was the facade of the Duomo, which was actually a marketing campaign by the Catholic Church after the Reformation. They wanted to make sure that the church was seen. The front of the church is kind of off to the side. It's pointing in the correct direction for a Catholic church, but when people walk up to the building, you really just saw a side wall and a bell tower.
So the church really relied upon the Baroque period that they were in at that point to give it a facelift and have the facade be a lot more than the plainer side that had been the main entrance previously.
The bishop at the time decided that let's make this look better. Let's make this look more fancy. And they actually moved the bell tower so they could put this facade up. And it was a long process to brick by brick move everything around just to get this marketing campaign up there. One thing we missed in Lecce was a lot of green space. There wasn't as many outdoor parks or places you could hang out. And it turns out that those are actually hidden behind private walls. There's a festival in May called Cortili Aperte, which is a festival in Lecce to let everyone into these courtyards and see the beauty and see the gardens. It's actually trees back there and everything that you would expect to be in a park. You just can't get at it most of the year.
We just flat ran out of time, but one of the things that I really wanted to be able to do was to visit the Jewish museum that's in Lecce. The museum is built on the site of the medieval synagogue that had previously been located there. And it's a small museum. It's easy enough for you to go through self-guided. It's quite a bit more expensive to have a tour guide, so you really don't need to pay to have someone guide you through it. But it's definitely worth seeing if you have an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, that's the problem with going to some of these cities and not spending a full month there. We really miss out on some things.
Every city, of course, has their own favorite specialties. And one of the things that is famous in Lecce is something called Pastichoto. It's a thick-crusted small pie that is either savory or sweet. And the sweet version is filled with custard, and the savory version is sometimes filled with meats. Ideally, you want to get it served warm.
Yeah, that's the thing about Italy. You can't think of it as one country with one type of food. It is very different from every region to each other region, and some have very different ideas of what the dinner food will be. You know, where you go in southern Italy, a lot of times it's pizza. You go to northern Italy and you're getting sauces and you're getting meats and you're getting pastas, and very different. So don't think of Italy as just one thing. It's diverse and you should visit all the areas.
And we're giving away a hidden gem to tell you that Cafe El Vino has some of the best cappuccino and espresso and pastries that you're going to find anywhere in Lecce. So enjoy.
One of the things that our tour guide showed us as we were walking around the city was this bread that was on display in one of the shops.
Frisé di orzo.
And it looked very brown, very tight, very hard. And apparently it is like dehydrated. And her thing was, oh, I take this to the beach and I put it in the water, in salt water, and it puffs up, and then I put some tomatoes on it, or cheese or olive oil. That didn't sound great to me, but apparently she loves it, and a lot of people love it.
I thought it sounded great. We didn't have any, but I really wish we did because it sounded really fun. You just mentioned olive oil, and Puglia is famous for their olive oil.
In fact, Lecce was made rich because of olive oil. It was the fuel of its time back in the medieval times. And so they had so many olive trees, and they had the best olive oil, and it was exported all over the world.
The Puglia region produces 50% of the olive oil for all of Italy and 12% for the entire world.
This is a big problem today because there's a blight that started back in 2010 that was a bacteria imported from Costa Rica.
Someone had brought in something into the country that they shouldn't have, and there were no natural ways to fight it.
Right. So 1/3 of the olive trees that are in the Puglia region are being affected by this. So that's 20 million out of 60 million trees. And there's really nothing more they can do except take the trees out and replace them with a different type of tree.
Exactly. Some of these trees are actually 1,000 years old.
Even though it's not a central part of Italy, the Puglia region does have a good train system, and Lecce is connected to the other cities that are up and down the strip on the East Coast side. And we use the trains to basically get to other cities that had airports because Lecce doesn't have an airport.
I liked the fact that Lecce's train station is actually walking distance to the ancient city center.
Right. Sometimes the train stations are located a little further out because they were built later, and this was just ideal.
Right. Even carrying our luggage, it wasn't a big deal to have to do.
Oh, rolling our luggage. I wouldn't carry that thing.
True. We do have backpacks as well as rolling, though.
That's true, yes. And we try to save our wheels by putting our backpacks on our back.
If you want to know everything that we pack with us, check out the video below where we go through everything that's in our backpack and suitcases. We've actually mentioned this in our previous video, but I think it really bears repeating, especially as we've been continuing to travel. The people of Lecce are really kind and warm-hearted and lovely, lovely people. So if you go to Lecce for nothing else, we encourage you to get to know the people of that region because they really are very special.
There's definitely a lot we missed because we didn't spend a full month in the Lecce or Puglia area. There's so many little towns around there. There are cities we could have spent more time in.
We definitely allowed the weather to get the better of us while we were there.
Sure.
And I would say, really to get the meat of a city, I would spend as much time as you possibly can. And so some of the things that we didn't do were more because of the cold than running out of time. Ideally, try to catch it in the spring or fall when it's not super crowded and not super cold.
And more things are open.
Exactly. We'd love to have you subscribe to us if you're enjoying following along with us.
And give us a like and check out findingGina.com for more information and Judy's journals, which are detailed articles about what we're seeing.
Until next time.
Until next time. But we just didn't spend enough time, and 2 weeks just isn't enough.
And we were only there 1 week. Right?
Yeah, right.
Sorry.
It's okay.